Well, welcome to this webcast. My name is Jonathan Foust, and you are you, whoever you are. I'm delighted you're here. So, I've got a fresh talk I've been thinking about, looking forward to sharing with you after we do some announcements and after we do a short meditation. Let's see, where do I begin? Well, the standard thank yous. First of all, thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this event. A big thank you to my little dog over there who is protecting me from something really nefarious. Um, Big thank you to Glenn Harrison, our producer, for pulling all the technical stuff together to make this happen. To Rita Moran, our mindful movement leader, who has been for years now leading mindful movement before this class. You can get the link to her Zoom class on my website and on my Facebook page. There's something really scary out there. I don't know, I'm sure if you can hear the barking, but we'll make room for it. Let's see what else. I've got a newsletter. If you're interested, I share my best photography updates, that sort of thing. There's a weekly for the talk. There's a monthly or every couple months. I share with you my best photography. And let's see. Um, as always, just a reminder, this is all offered freely, no ads, no online stuff. It's all offered in the spirit of generosity, that no one is ever denied access to these practices and teachings. For me, it's a really interesting way to share fully, freely. And if you feel like supporting this, thank you. And finally, just a reminder that in June 1st is the deadline for the Year of Living Mindfully program. This is the 11th year of the Year of Living Mindfully that I'm offering here in DC. If you are interested, please do check it out. It's all about practicing, sustaining practice in community. If you think you would benefit from associated with like-minded people for a year, exploring very powerful, intensive, transformational practices, this is a pretty awesome program. I also am offering a small online component as well. In the Year of Living Mindfully, the day-long retreats, of which there are 9, and there are a few optional. It's all about practicing together in person, and some of those day-longs will be available online. But there's something ineffable about the in-person, so that's really the core of the program. But anyway, you can check it all out on my website. And that is it for promotion. Our practice and our talk for today is all about a recipe for letting go and a recipe for forgiveness. We've all done dumb stuff in this life, and the question becomes, how do we make peace with that? How do we grow? How do we hold forgiveness in a larger context? I think it's going to be good. So in the meantime, let's take a couple minutes here to settle and to relax into the flow of things. So if you like, you might like to move your body in some way that feels good for you. You might want to stretch, reach your arms overhead, open your jaw wide, see if you can let out a yawn, invoke the yawn reflex. When you're ready, you might close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, take a few moments just to feel this inner world of sensations, feelings. Notice where you feel the breath on the inside. Feel the air touching your skin, the texture of the air. Can you, at the same time, notice the sound vibrations, the external sounds and how they register in your consciousness? If your eyes are closed, can you just sense the quality of the light beyond your closed eyes right now? In this realm of aliveness, in this realm of being human, you inhabit this flesh unit, this body. And paradoxically, awareness of the body becomes the doorway to the present moment and to unlocking innumerable things. So, as you are aware of all the senses of the breath, the sounds, the air touching your skin, can you also just sense of just for a moment what it is that is aware? Can you, if for a moment, just imagine that you could locate awareness? To deepen this doorway to intimacy, you might imagine and feel from the inside your forehead. Imagine your forehead utterly smooth. Imagine or feel the muscles around your eyes relaxing, softening. Imagine your face like the face of a marble statue. And just scan through the muscles of the face and imagine or feel all the micro muscles softening. And you might, in particular, feel the inside of your mouth, the volume of your lips, and letting the tongue relax and fill your lower jaw. Can you feel or imagine your jaw relaxing down and away from the skull? Just a tiny bit. You might imagine your arms like empty coat sleeves, like heavy drapes, and just sense down through the center of the bones, down through the elbows, down through the wrists, down into the palms, the backs of the hands, thumbs and fingers. And how intimately can you feel this sense of aliveness inside? Pulse, tingling, vibration, energy, this felt sense of aliveness. You might take a few moments and let your awareness move down into the belly and the lower abdomen. And for the next few breaths, just track the movement of the breath here. Perhaps on the exhalation, just softening a little bit more than the exhalation preceding it. And as you relax, what do you feel? You may notice how the deeper you relax, the more this realm of felt sense and sensation is accessible. The more you relax, the more you feel. And you might sense now the length and the weight of the legs. And sense down from the knees, down through the ankles, and the hips to the knees. and sensing from the inside the volume of your feet, soles of the feet and the heels. As you sense now from the crown of the head down through the soles of the feet, down through the palms, is there anything inside right now that could relax a little bit more? Is there anything that could soften or relax just a little bit more than that? And from this place of relaxed, awake presence, you might escort your attention to your breath or to the sounds and let this be your primary focus, like picking out from an orchestra the sound of the piccolo, from the orchestra of sensations, just pulling out awareness of breath or the awareness of sound. And for these next few minutes, let your attention return again and again, acknowledging that the mind is constantly in motion, constantly commenting. When you notice the mind active or lost in thought, notice how gently you can bring it back to this breath and to these sounds and to this sense of the here and now. As many times as your mind may wander, that many times you can begin again to re-arrive, soften inside, and let your attention settle on this sense of the here and now, this point of contact with the breath or with sound. In these remaining minutes, you might like to explore a little experiment, acknowledging the breath or sound in the foreground, turning your attention to be more aware of the background, of everything that's changing, the whole symphony of sensations, of sound, of feeling, sensing who you are as awareness itself and your capacity to let things be just as they are. And you might explore now in this remaining minute relaxing any sense of doing, any sense of trying to make your experience happen, and instead sense what it's like just to simply rest in presence, to let things be, to relax and to feel, and to allow your experience to unfold all by itself. You might now begin to deepen your breath. Just notice the quality of presence. Just sense what may have shifted for you in the last little while of practice. Let your body move and stretch, taking all the time you need for your transition. And welcome back. Thought I'd open this talk with a story that kind of traumatizes me when I think about it. I had a good friend back in the ashram days who was leading a yoga class. And in the ashram, we had these big program rooms, so probably like 70 people in this room. And as everyone's settling in over the public address system, we had really nice sound systems. He told the group the class would start in a few minutes, to settle in, feel free to get comfortable, rest, all that stuff. And as they were settling in, he realized he needed to use the bathroom. So he did. And he came back. He was on time for the class. But when he came back into the room, something was really weird. And the energy of the room was really weird. Some people were kind of looking down, like looking away. Some people were giggling. And he only found out later that it turns out he forgot to turn off his lavalier microphone before he went to relieve himself. I've never done that. I've come close, but I'm proud to say I've never done that. And mostly because of the anticipation of the searing embarrassment that would ensue. I've done a lot of dumb things in my life. Some of them are pretty amusing. Some are more serious. In the realm of relationships and communications, I stumble all the time, as I think we all do. And inevitably, there is the ensuing self-judgment, the blame, the shame that we hold that kind of holds us back from feeling more fully alive. And all the ways that we've stumbled, all the ways we hold ourselves in contempt or self-judgment, somehow we have to let that go. But the question is how? How do we let go of our embarrassment, of our shame, of our the guilt that we might have? And if you've explored at all the whole realm of forgiveness, of course, you know that it starts with yourself, forgiving yourself. And there's one phrase that has been a lifesaver for me. And when I screw up, which can be with remarkable regularity, this is the line that I found helpful. I allow myself to be a learner. So what happens when I reflect on that line, There's a recognition that I screwed up. There's something about naming it that gives me some space. And there's something in here, in that space, that it actually creates some room for learning. And maybe I continue on a little bit wiser. So this talk is prompted by some reflection on self-forgiveness. I'd like to talk about a formula for forgiveness and letting go. I'll share a little bit of the origin story, a little bit on the mechanics of forgiveness and a formula for letting go. I'd also like to talk about how you can screw this up. Like what gets in the way of release? What gets in the way of letting go? What gets in the way of forgiveness? And some reflections on what it means to free your heart. So you may have heard this story. It's a story from the 1980s, a psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Hugh Len. He was hired to work at the Hawaii State Hospital, and he was assigned to a ward for the criminally insane, a place notorious for violence, high staff turnover, a sense of hopelessness. And the atmosphere was so toxic that staff members would call in sick just to avoid coming into work. But Dr. Hugh Len did something really unusual. And this is the story. He never met with the patients directly. Instead, he sat in his office and he reviewed their files. As he did, he practiced a simple internal ritual rooted in the Hawaiian tradition, and I hope I say this correctly, ho'oponopono. And he would repeat these phrases silently. So imagine him opening a file, reading all the details. First phrase, I am sorry. The second phrase, please forgive me. Third phrase, thank you. And the fourth phrase, I love you. Now, here's what Dr. Hewland believed. He believed that by taking full responsibility, not just for his own actions, but for everything that appeared in his life, he could help heal what was within him that was manifesting as suffering in these patients. So that's really, really critical. That taking responsibility for his actions, taking responsibility for what was arising, if he could heal that, that would be of support, of help in the world. So over time, there was a transformation in the hospital. Patients who had been shackled were allowed to walk freely. Those heavily medicated began reducing their prescriptions. Violent incidents declined. And eventually the ward was shut down, not out of failure, but because there were no more patients to treat. When he was asked how he healed people he had never met, Dr. Hewland replied, I was simply healing the part of me that created them. Okay. So I need to pause here. How does that story resonate for you? You might hear this, as I did, through a lens of pretty intense skepticism. I mean, come on. It's a little too new age. It's a little too perfect. It sounds a lot like magical thinking. And while modern scholars might question the literal details of the story, it does capture a deepening truth at the heart of this Hawaiian practice. How does healing happen? Well, it happens by taking radical responsibility. What does that mean? It means asking yourself, what is true? What do I actually feel? How does this show up inside me? It also has an element of self-inquiry, of, of deeply asking yourself questions, but more than that, being open to what arises. To ask yourself, can I open to truth? Can I open to acknowledge what I truly feel, how this lives on the inside? And part of that inquiry is the transformative power of love and forgiveness. Can I open to love? Can I open to this space that allows me to let this go? So while the story may sound a little hokey, the essence of it sounds pretty good to me. And the question becomes, how do we develop this muscle? Relying on the two wings of mindfulness, of seeing clearly, recognizing what's true, getting off your story and your embellishments and your hopes, what's true. And then exploring what it means to cultivate a heart that can actually hold this. So, a story, a couple who had been drifting apart for years. And over the years, communication got tense. Small petty arguments began to escalate. And one member found themselves building a quiet wall of resentment. Just, the hardening that happens. And one day, after reading about this technique of ho'oponopono, she began using the phrase as a silent meditation while thinking of her partner. So each morning she'd sit for a few minutes and just repeat inwardly, I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. She wasn't excusing his behavior, but she was acknowledging her own pain, her part in the dynamic, and her deeper wish for healing. And over time, something softened. Without directly confronting him, she became just a little bit less reactive, a little bit more open. And her partner noticed. Conversations grew a little more gentle, vulnerability started to return, and eventually they spoke honestly and found common ground, and they rekindled a connection that had seemed lost. Now, again, magical story, or is there truth in there? She did not work her stuff directly with him. That's again an important part. She did it internally. And we'll talk more later on this because it's an important point. She just simply sat with her inner process. And so, as I always do, I'll be leading a few guided experiences. But the first question is, how have you built walls of resentment around you? When you just reflect, and you might, if you like, you can close your eyes for a few moments just to kind of sense in your life right now, what is your experience of judgment, of ill will and blame? Is there a sense of what's unforgiven in your life? So I'd like to break down the elements of these four phrases. And in just an invitation, if you like, you can just sense to internalize them. If there's any particular, I will lead a guided experience in a little bit, but you might just sort of sense what this feels like for you. When you reflect on the phrase, I'm sorry, it opens up an acknowledgement of responsibility. It's a recognition and taking ownership for any harm, any disconnection, any imbalance. And as referencing kind of Buddhist psychology, we create harm through actions, through speech, and through thoughts. And part of this is around expressing remorse, maybe without the self-blame, just the remorse. This is really about how this issue or how this relationship lives on the inside and how you're holding it. So it's seeing clearly and feeling genuine remorse. The second phrase, forgive me, it's really a request for release. It's about asking forgiveness from yourself, from others, from the universe. It's an invitation to let go of guilt, an invitation to let go of resentment. It's an invitation to let go. It's important to note that forgiveness doesn't happen at the snap of the finger. It's usually a process of softening, but it becomes this deep inquiry. What would it feel like if you were forgiven? What would it feel like if you forgave another? The third phrase, thank you, is an expression of gratitude. And here I love this one because it's offering thanks for the opportunity to heal. The opportunity to be heard, the opportunity to contact something previously unseen and unfelt. It's cultivating appreciation even in the midst of pain or conflict. It's really about offering thanks for this being revealed to you and the opportunity to transform it, the opportunity to hold this in the light of awareness. And the fourth phrase, I love you, is really a phrase of reconnection and integration. It's affirming love for yourself, love for others, and love for life itself. It reinforces a sense of wholeness and connection. And it really is an inquiry. Can I hold this in loving awareness? Can I hold this in the light of the awakened heart? What I find is that forgiveness is a slow process. It has to be a gentle process. It can't be forced. It doesn't mean you condone another person's activity or your own. You can forgive someone and never talk to them again. You can forgive someone and never allow that activity to ever happen again. For many, it's about unwinding the hurt. It's about unwinding your own patterns of self-preservation. And it's about opening to new possibilities, to more skillful actions. And as challenging as this practice can be, as I like to say, you do get your life back. So, like all great transformative things, it's simple. It's just not easy. I'd like to talk about what gets in the way of implementing this. How do we kind of like mess this formula up? Naturally, our mind is scanning for stuff that could hurt us. It's scanning for what could go wrong. It's the negativity bias. And we tend to externalize our issues on other people. One thing that Dr. Liu had pointed out really emphatically is that you are addressing the data of how it lives in you. That is to say, you are turning all of your attention inward. How does this incident, how does this relationship, how does this event live on the inside? What are the data points? It's not so much about the externals, but how you're relating to it. It's about your perception of them. So one of the blocks to letting go is the mental resistance to taking responsibility. When I first ran across this, the Buddhist formula for forgiveness, I selected someone, and it was very clear that he was the jerk. It wasn't my fault. He was the oppressor. And it wasn't until I really thought about it, when I ran across those phrases of we do harm in three different ways, through our actions, through thoughts, and through words, when I realized, was I harmful through my actions? Not so much. Through my words, absolutely. I would complain to anyone who would listen. And through my thoughts, absolutely. I was generating all kinds of violence toward this person. And part of that was a recognition of, whoa, I I really do need to take responsibility for my thoughts, my speech, and my actions. The ego, our conditioning, will resist accepting responsibility for outer circumstances. We assume it's the other's fault. But when you do take genuine ownership, it's a different game. If you don't, this practice feels really mechanical and really insincere. So it's not about blame, it's about healing your relationship with what's arising in the moment. The second element that gets in the way of release and forgiveness is an emotional disconnection or numbness, which is really natural. We are trained not to feel. I remember I caught up with a with an old friend. Again, this is back living in my ashram days, um, and I told him where I was living, and he goes, "Oh, I've seen your catalog. It's that catalog where everyone is smiling." I thought, wow, that's true. In my community, it wasn't really okay to be angry. That just was not a very enlightened thing. And as you can imagine, there was a huge shadow that needed to be handled there. But when we feel pain or when we feel any degree of trauma, we tend to disconnect from our feelings. We protect against vulnerability, and whatever words or expression we have may feel hollow or they may feel forced. And this is where, back in the, as I always say, like in the Buddhist practice, it becomes so dry unless you're connected to it. May you feel happy, may you know peace, may you be free from suffering. You need to connect with the feeling of it. You need to connect with the emotion to it. So it's about slowing down. It's about feeling the phrases, letting the emotions surface, even if they're uncomfortable. The third element that gets in the way is impatience or expecting immediate results. And boy, I imagine you know this one. A relationship falls apart, and 5 months later, you're thinking, why am I not over this? Why do I keep going back to replay this and experience this feeling of guilt or shame? It's a real challenge because the mind expects quick fixes. We want our deep-seated wounds to heal immediately. So it's important to recognize that it's a steady course here. It's subtle. It's gentle persistence and inner alignment again and again and again. I'll talk about that in a few moments. When you want to let go, when you want to forgive, you have to cultivate humility, emotional presence, and a spirit of surrender. And what I found is if I move into it wanting to fix it real quick, it's rarely really helpful. But when I can cultivate a sense of sincerity and openness, small little shifts can really begin to open things up. So maybe we can do a little reflection. Now, before we do this little reflection, you might think of something that feels a little sticky in your life. And as we often suggest, maybe not choose like that arch nemesis, the one thing in your life that's been sticky forever. Maybe something a little bit minor, just to kind of try this on. So anywhere where you feel a sense of disconnect, a sense of distance, anywhere you've kind of walled anyone off. And if you like, you can close your eyes, not required. I'll offer just a few phrases and give you a minute or two for each of these questions. And it's really helpful before we begin to let go of any expectations, to abandon any attachment to the results, to allow yourself to be open to whatever might arise. So you might bring into mind this situation, a relationship, and if you would, cultivate some visual image, if that's easy for you, a representative image. It might be just be an image of the other person or see a situation, just sense if you can kind of create the visual. You might deepen your breath a little bit just to sort of stay in contact with the intention of calling this forward. If there are any words or sounds, you might reflect on those. Maybe there's a tone of voice there. And then, if it feels okay for you, let yourself begin to open to the felt sense of it. How does this situation live inside? What forms? You may find it in the midline and the core. Are there any particular emotions that you can sense? And as you sense how this lives on the inside, you might just say internally the words, I'm sorry. And as you do so, just recognizing any harm or disconnection or imbalance might be caused by your actions or thoughts, maybe unconscious patterns. And take a moment to, in your own way, express genuine remorse without self blame. I'm sorry. And you might now offer the phrase, forgive me. And with this phrase, forgive me, there is a request for release, to be forgiven for yourself, to forgive others, to invite letting go of guilt, letting go of resentment, letting go of judgment. What would it feel like if you could let it go? Forgive me. Offering the words, reflecting on the words now. Thank you. An expression of gratitude for this opportunity to heal, to grow, to feel more whole. This opportunity to hold this event in the light of love and the light of consciousness and the light of awareness. Is it possible to find a quality of gratitude now? Reflecting now on the phrase, offering the phrase, I love you. This phrase of reconnection, affirming love for yourself, or love for life itself. And can you sense a quality of wholeness, a quality of connection, the light of the awakened heart? And now, if you like, just take a few moments to just to let go of any effort and just rest in presence. What shifted? You might sense a willingness to return again, to explore these four phrases. If you like, you can open your eyes or feel free to remain with them closed. When we are in pain, we calcify, we harden, we shut down. Pain oftentimes hardens into beliefs, and quite commonly, the belief is there's something wrong with me. I screwed up. A while back, I feel like I screwed up an important relationship. I was left with a sense of self-judgment, of shame, and I found myself coming back again and again. Not in a healthy way. kind of a pattern of self-recrimination way. And so in my effort to learn and grow, I kind of engaged into this practice. And what's interesting in revisiting, every time I would come back to kind of explore my own sense of self-recrimination and judgment, it was painful each time, but every time there'd be some tiny nugget of insight, sometimes a bigger nugget of insight, sometimes a shift in heart. And the phrase, I'm sorry, would be kind of a replay of, well, what did I actually do? What was the conditioning around my actions and around my words? What was the underpinning of my beliefs around how I showed up? And every time I would come back with a sense of openness, I would begin to see amazing connections, amazing patterns. And in that alone helped me to see more clearly that there's a whole sub-program behind my actions. The phrase, please forgive me, opened up a real question for me. Well, what does it mean to be forgiven? Quite often, what I find is there's something I'm not willing to feel. And to open to what it really truly means to be forgiven means to hold this in that bright, shining light of awareness, to make room for sadness, to make room for regret, to make room for loss. Quite often, I find in that inquiry of please forgive me and moving into that appeal to let go, the words drop away. It's quite often just an existential ache. The phrase thank you. The more I would practice, the more I would start to feel gratitude for seeing the patterns and the filters I unconsciously took on in this life. I began to be grateful for seeing my patterns of shutting down. And the phrase I love you is a tough one for me. That's, I think, mostly cultural. But as I kept coming back to what is that? What does I love you mean? That inevitably it would begin to open me once again to feeling more whole, to feeling connection, and rather to feel disconnection fall away. So you may find if there is some situation, some relationship you want to unravel, just coming back to these phrases can be tremendously, tremendously helpful. I've learned a lot. I've had some very, very powerful insights, unexpected insights have arisen as I've chosen to really sit and have tea with this. Will I ever get to express this to the other person? Maybe not. And I have to be okay with that. And as Dr. Hugh Len says, you're working with the data, the information in your subconscious, and you're healing that. So it's a very profound thing. I found in my own desire to let go that I would get frustrated with myself. And I would remember in meditation just thinking like, why can't I let this go? And this phrase arose that said, let it go and don't let it go. And something so powerful in that. The intention to let it go, but also don't let it go. Remember, like remember this. It softened something for me. So this is a practice that you can bring in when it feels right. When you want to open the heart, inevitably it will reveal the guarded heart. And it's so important to remember that. As I like to say, when you're focused on concentration meditation practice, you will see very, very clearly how scattered your mind is. In that same way, when you focus on breaking the shell of your protected heart, you will see all the small and large and searing wounds that have closed you down. You will see into the construction of the small self. That's part of the game. So there's some really interesting examples, and I just thought I would share with you. Someone at work constantly clashing with a colleague, miscommunications lead to tensions, frustration. And he decided through this practice that every time he thought of her, he would get triggered. And he would just repeat the phrases, I'm sorry. And again, taking responsibility for how, of the data of how that lives on the inside. Please forgive me, the call for release. Thank you, gratitude, I love you, and wholeness. And he said that he didn't really say anything to her for at first, but over a few weeks, he noticed his attitude was shifting toward her. He was less defensive, a little more curious. And then one time when they disagreed, instead of reacting, he listened. And she opened up about feeling undervalued herself. The conversation sparked a collaboration, and they developed a really powerful relationship on their team. There's something here about the willingness to feel, something here about the willingness to see clearly what's present, to request release, to express gratitude, and to reconnect back to source. There is just so much going on the planet right now, so much turmoil. And I hope you might find that this tool might be a helpful practice for you. Again, it's not about the externals, it's about how they live on the inside. This reminds me of a story of someone who was in a tremendous amount of pain. Her son-in-law um, just really didn't like her, didn't want her in the house with her grandchildren. Um, very, very, very difficult relationship. And she was really, really hurt because she really wanted to be with her grandkids. And she tried talking it through with him, and he wasn't having it. He just had this visceral dislike of her. I didn't know about this technique of Ho'oponopono. I keep pronouncing it wrong. This Hawaiian healing technique. But there was another thing that I had heard, and I just suggested, we were just chatting after class, and I said, one thing you might do, I had heard about this, and I had tried this, like that if you believe in a guardian angel, you know, rather than talking to them directly, have your guardian angel talk to his guardian angel and just let him know, that you're sorry and that you care and that you wish him well. And she said, I can do that. And then I saw her like 3 weeks later, and she goes like, I think it worked. We're talking. And what I love about that story, whether you believe in guardian angels or not, is it's an inside job. There was something that she was doing in that practice of working the data points inside her that inevitably cultivates a shift. So maybe we can just review these one more time, and then we'll close out with a short meditation. So you might like to close your eyes once again. And you might like to revisit what you were focusing on earlier, or you might like to bring into mind another little issue in your life that's between you and feeling free or feeling happy. You might even choose something really, really small just to kind of get a sense of the inner mechanics here. And when I offer the phrase, you might either repeat the phrase a few times or, in particular, let the phrase open up into the felt sense of how it lives on the inside. So take a few moments and bring into mind a particular person, a particular issue. I find it helpful to see if you can visualize it, a still image or a moving image. The first phrase is around acknowledgement of responsibility. The phrase, I am sorry. Recognizing, taking ownership for any harm or disconnection or imbalance. Expression of genuine remorse without blame. You might take 3 breaths. Turning your attention to the request for release, the phrase, forgive me. Is it possible to let go of any guilt or resentment or judgment? What would it feel like to forgive and to be forgiven? 3 breaths. And now the expression of gratitude, the phrase, thank you. The opportunity to heal, to cultivate appreciation even in the midst of pain, to see more clearly. And 3 slow, deep breaths. And now the phrase of reconnection and integration, the phrase, I love you. Affirming love for yourself, love for life itself, and opening to a sense of wholeness and connection, opening into the light of the awakened heart and mind. And now, if you would, just simply take this next few moments just to relax and feel, to sense what shifted. If you like, you can gently open your eyes. I hope you found this helpful. In these days, I believe we all want to feel more facile in dismantling the walls that we create around ourselves. And if there is ever is a time when I'm leading a group and I leave my lavalier mic on when I run to take a pee and I come back, I will be able to dismantle my shame and self-judgment with these techniques. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you found this helpful, and so many blessings in all that you feel called to in your life. Take good care.